The gentleman back.
Can
Yeah.
I just say one other thing? Your point about countrywide dueling statistics is perfectly well made. But I would just suggest one thing. You can lose a lot in those, which is why it's actually really important to look sector by sector, because you can look at a country, you could look at an advanced country like Japan, and you could say, well, they're doing a lot of things right, and in, say, the auto sector, they are. It's the most productive industry in the world. But in their retail sector, Japan is horribly hampered by an institutional mix that leads Japanese retail to be incredibly inefficient and to serve consumers very poorly. Or you look at a developing country like India, which services does quite well, and certain back office things, but then in telecom it's doing poorly because of corruption. There's a huge corruption scandal with its recent licensing of a spectrum, for example. So if you're an investor and saying, I want to invest in India, I might do it for my back office, or I might do it for something, to put in a call center or something like that, because it's welcome in that sector, but it is decidedly not, and there are huge problems in in the mobile space, for example. And so you need to look country by country, and again, a lot can be lost, but Rob's statistics, for example, on telecom, that's really worrisome. I mean, if I'm in Poland and I'm saying, why is there woeful lack of investment in the telecom sector, or underinvestment or malinvestment, I'd be looking for what's the institutional mix that's making that so. If it's uncertainty because of capricious actions by the government, or because the rules are rigged in some way, shape, or form for an already existing business or an incumbent, those are the kinds of things that would concern me as an investor. So you're right about countrywide numbers, although when I do see numbers saying that on for investor protection or contracts it's slipping, I might at least want to look and investigate that.
Okay, I think we have several questions here. Keep your questions short if you can, please. Sir, in the back.
I have a question to Ms. Kramer. You mentioned...
Oh, could you identify yourself, if you don't mind?
Yes, Kazakowski, I'm with Poland Communication.
Right.
Do you have any idea how to resolve environmental concern with, as you pointed, short-term gain connected with shale gas development? And also, I would like to point that this is not short-term gain, since Poland is dependent on Gazprom deliveries. It's a major key issue of Polish energy security.
Can I just intervene here for a second? I don't want to get too bogged down into the fracking issue, which I've also been involved in, actually on the other side from Hillary. So maybe that's why I want to intervene. But I just don't want to. But if we can keep this short.
I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay. No, it's an important issue. There's no doubt about it. But
right. I will respond by saying you make an excellent point. Your Uwa Zaluska, your director of geology at Poland's Ministry of the Environment, says the shale gas is the gold rush of the 21st century, and that Poland could be the next Norway. I mean, your opportunity, and for the sake of time, I didn't present both sides of it. The opportunity is there, and by the way, the shale natural gas fracking can take 10 years. It may not be fully developed and ready until 2020. The problem is that anytime you want FDI, but you also want it to keep the people safe, And I'm happy to share with you a paper that came out yesterday from Yale University. School of Sustainability, Clean Energy that they have there, written by this Ben Schiller, that's excellent, that talks about, he did a study on Poland and the issues. And then one other point to the, what was you're from the Polish Embassy? Okay, just so you know, that earlier this month, the French Ministry of Ecology called a halt to all shale gas drilling throughout the country while it assesses the environmental issues. Its report is due in June. I was comparing you to Germany, France, not to, I was looking west. But in Germany, you have major.
Okay, all right. We don't want to go to.
Anyway, in major protests. No, I said there were protests and concerns.
Let me point out that
there's two sides to it. And look, we're doing it in our own country. That's why I said that's how come we know from the EPA, and and part of it is environmental control in the process.
Let me point out that the country that seems to be raising the most environmental alarms over fracking in other countries is Russia, which may tell you something. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Eric Stewart. I'm president of the U.S. Poland Business Council based here in Washington, D.C. And when you, in Nick, I think you made some good points about the issues of being able to look at different sides of statistics. But Mr. Shapiro, going to your point about sort of the feeling from investors, I can tell you, as the president's newly formed council, there used to be a council back in the 90s. All of the Central European councils were basically done away with. This one has reemerged as of last year, and it simply reemerged because of the interest from multinationals in doing business in Poland, very frankly. And so we actually have 4 types of members that have joined. One, the members that see the potential for investing in Poland and wanted to create a U.S.-Poland council. The companies that have issues or problems, which obviously you have in every single country. The defense companies, of course, obviously are a very strong political military relationship. And then you have the companies, frankly, that are invested in Poland. They've been invested in Poland. They're manufacturing in Poland, and they're just happy. They don't have any problems. They don't have any issues. But Poland has become either a world headquarters or a European headquarters for them, and they want to maintain that. And so we actually literally created a Poland Business Council, within a matter of weeks, based on the feeling from American investors that things were moving in a positive direction. And when you look at the fact that Poland has been the only country that grew in 2009 in Europe, and everyone else was lagging behind, and you look at a lot of the positive trends, I don't disagree, Nick, that there are some concerning issues when you look at some of the statistics, and we certainly want to see those going in the right direction. I agree with you. But based on the companies that are making investments and putting iron in the ground that are on the council that I run, it's very, very positive outlook for Poland, and they see a tremendous amount of growth. And they're actually, a lot of them have told me they're very comfortable that Poland hasn't grown or moved too fast in one direction. The only other issue that I would address is the issue of infrastructure. I don't disagree, and the Poles know it. The government knows it. Everybody knows it. Infrastructure needs improvement, and the European Union has committed however many billions of funds to do that, and that will happen. But in my mind, that's not a systematic problem as much as it is they need to spend the money and they need to make the improvement.
One point, it's interesting what you say, because when I look at the statistics, I see in 2009, Poland had growth. They had 1.9% growth, 3.8% last year. It should be 3.5%. Everything, and it's not because of stimulus. I mean, it was true growth that took place in Poland. The problem is this $500 million binding arbitration, the council in Vienna that decided that this was owed, has created a black eye, for Poland. I mean, when you go across Europe, the reputation, everyone's following this case. It's gone on for 9 years, and it's really hindered, I think, the reputation of investing in Poland, and and especially because of the terms at which it was initially embarked upon, which was the excitement of infrastructure and and telecom development in the country, and it's been successful, but it's just such a mystery why this particular situation can't be resolved.
And again, I would say that the people on this panel are enthusiastic about Poland. The purpose is not to beat up on Poland, far from it. But I do think that it's important to recognize some of the metrics that are not as good as the GDP in 2009. One of them is the unemployment rate, and I realize there's some debate about it, but if you look at The Economist, the most current issue, Poland's unemployment rate is the 4th worst in the 43 countries that The Economist looks at. It has a very high budget deficit as a percentage of GDP, although not as high as that in the United States. So anyway, so there are a number of areas that need to be addressed, and I think there's some emphasis on this panel about addressing these rule of law issues.